Imagine walking into a classroom where suddenly your worth is determined by the color of your eyes. Your teacher tells you that because of your eye color, you are superior or inferior. How would you feel? Would you start to believe it? This is exactly what happened in 1968 when a third-grade teacher named Jane Elliott conducted one of the most controversial and eye-opening social experiments in history. The blue eyes, brown eyes experiment. What she uncovered about human nature and prejudice still has a powerful impact today. Jane Elliott was a teacher in Riceville, Iowa, who became deeply affected by the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in 1968. She wanted her students to understand racism not just in theory, but in a way they could feel and remember. What she did next was both bold and unsettling. She divided her classroom based on eye color, setting up an experiment that would change the way people think about discrimination. Elliott began the exercise by telling her students that blue-eyed children were smarter, better, and more deserving than brown-eyed children. She gave the blue-eyed kids special privileges, extra recess time, access to the drinking fountain first, and even words of praise. Meanwhile, the brown-eyed children were forced to wear identifying collars and were treated as less intelligent and lazy. The results were immediate and shocking. The blue-eyed children became more confident, bossy, and even mean toward their brown-eyed classmates. The brown-eyed children became more withdrawn, anxious, and even started to perform worse on simple tasks. By the end of the day, friendships had changed, and a deep divide had formed within the class. The next day, Elliott reversed the roles. Now brown-eyed students were the superior group. The results were the same. Whichever group was deemed inferior suffered emotionally and mentally. Even though the students knew each other well, a simple label was enough to change their behavior and beliefs. Elliott's experiment showed how easily prejudice can be created and reinforced. The students quickly adapted to their new roles, showing that discrimination is not something we are born with. It is something we learn. The exercise highlighted how quickly people accept authority's definition of superiority and inferiority, even when it is based on something as trivial as eye color. Long-term effects were just as fascinating. Years later, when Elliott's former students were interviewed, many of them recalled the exercise as a defining moment in their understanding of racism. They never forgot what it felt like to be judged unfairly, and it changed their perspective on discrimination forever. Although the experiment took place in 1968, its lessons remain highly relevant today. Modern racism may not always be as blatant as it was during the civil rights movement, but systemic discrimination, unconscious bias, and social inequalities persist. Conscious bias. Studies show that people still make snap judgments based on race, gender, and other factors, often without realizing it. Systemic racism. In education, the workplace, and even healthcare, certain groups face more challenges simply due to ingrained societal biases. The power of authority. Much like how Jane Elliott's students quickly accepted their roles, many people conform to discriminatory systems because they are taught to believe in them from an early age. The blue eyes, brown eyes experiment exposed how easily society can be manipulated into prejudice, which is why understanding it is so important today. While Elliott's experiment is still praised for its impact, it has also been criticized for the emotional distress it caused her students. Some argue that subjecting children to discrimination, even temporarily, could be harmful. However, Elliott defended her approach, stating that the experience was a small price to pay for the lifelong lesson it taught about racism. Today, similar exercises are conducted in diversity training and anti-racism programs, though with more precautions to prevent emotional harm. The debate continues. How far should we go to teach empathy? Jane Elliott's experiment may have taken place over 50 years ago, but its message is timeless. Prejudice is not inherent, it is taught. Just as her students learned discrimination in a single day, people can also be taught to unlearn it. Understanding the blue eyes, brown eyes experiment is more than just a history lesson. It is a call to examine our own biases, challenge unfair systems, and strive for a world where labels do not define worth. So the next time you see discrimination, ask yourself, is this just another version of the same experiment playing out in real life?